criticizes Pyongyang, Beijing and Moscow for religious repression and human rights issues in its new annual report on religious freedom. North Korea is slammed for its reckless actions in its nuclear program as it assumes a month-long rotating presidency of the United Nations disarmament body. 48 members of the Geneva-based Conference on Disarmament expressed concern against Pyongyang's violation of numerous Security Council resolutions. OPEC countries agreed to ramp up oil production over the next 2 months after the EU agreed to impose a partial ban on Russian oil imports, raising fears of global energy shortages as Moscow's invasion of Ukraine continues to rattle markets.
Hello and welcome to New Day at Arirang. It's Friday, June 3rd, 8 a.m. here in Seoul, South Korea, and I'm Lee Seung-jae.
I'm Oh Seung. Thank you for joining us this morning because over the next hour, we'll be giving you a look at the biggest headlines of the day and experts' insights on some of the key issues facing Korea and the rest of the world. The US State Department has slammed North Korea for seriously limiting religious freedom in the country in its annual report on global religious freedom.
That's right. It said that nearly 70,000 North Koreans may be in prison for their religious beliefs. Kim Yo-sun with our top story.
Washington has once again expressed concerns over how North Korea continues to seriously restrict religious freedom. In its 2021 country report on international religious freedom, the U.S. State Department said Thursday that nearly 70,000 North Koreans may be imprisoned for their religious beliefs. The report also explained that the North has been designated as a, quote, country of particular concern since 2001 under the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998. It added that the regime has been engaged in or tolerated particularly severe violations of religious freedom. This marks the 20th consecutive year that the State Department has designated the North as violators of religious freedom. It was one of only 10 nations to be designated as a country of particular concern in 2020. Citing an earlier report published by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, the department noted that the regime has been systematically attacking persons it considers a threat, including those who practice religion. It continues that individuals were imprisoned without due process and subjected to physical and mental suffering amounting to torture. The State Department elaborated that its report is based on information provided by NGOs that may not be identified. It added that access to the regime has further narrowed since Pyongyang began implementing border closures in 2020 as a precautionary measure against COVID-19. The report also slammed China for committing, quote, genocide and crimes against humanity against the predominantly Muslim Uyghur community and members of other ethnic and religious minority groups. It also accused Russian authorities for allegedly engaging in improper acts against religious minorities within the country. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
Members of the UN Conference on Nuclear Disarmament slammed North Korea for the regime's reckless actions, which continue to seriously undermine the very value of the forum. This comes as the North now holds the rotating presidency at the UN disarmament body for the first time in 11 years. Our Kim Da-mi reports.
North Korea opened the UN Conference on Disarmament in Geneva on Thursday, but saw heavy criticism of its nuclear and missile programs. This comes as the North currently holds the rotating one-month presidency of the UN-backed forum focused on denuclearization efforts. Following Pyongyang's Ambassador Han Tae-sung's opening of the session, Australian Ambassador Amanda Gorley read a joint statement by around 40 countries, calling the North's nuclear missile activities, quote, a violation of numerous UN Security Council resolutions. Han said the North couldn't stand still, but stressed that his country's latest weapons tests are only in line with its plans to boost national defense. However, other member states, including South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, further condemned the North's latest flurry of ICBM launches and urged the regime to return to dialogue. Only China, Iran, Nigeria, and Pakistan congratulated the North for its leadership and pledged their cooperation. The supposedly 3-hour conference lasted for just over an hour in the midst of icy atmosphere and came amid concerns that the North is on the verge of conducting a nuclear test. Founded in 1979, the Multilateral Forum for Disarmament Negotiations discusses nuclear disarmament, bans on producing fissile material, and the prevention of an arms race in outer space. China, Colombia, Cuba, North Korea, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ecuador will take their turns leading the forum this year, and Pyongyang has been holding the presidency from Monday. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
America's special envoy for North Korea will hold trilateral talks with his counterparts from Seoul and Tokyo. Their diplomacy comes at a critical juncture. The regime testified several ballistic missiles, and there are signs it could conduct a nuclear test. Han Sung-woo tells us more.
Washington's special representative for North Korea, Sung Kim, on Thursday arrived in South Korea for a 3-day visit to discuss with Seoul and Tokyo the current state of affairs on the Korean peninsula and how they'll respond to Pyongyang's recent provocations.
There have been some important developments on the peninsula since my last visit, and I'm looking forward to having an in-depth discussion with the new ROK Special Representative Ambassador Kim Gun, bilaterally, but also trilateral with Ambassador Kim and Director General Funakoshi from Japan.
He'll be joining his South Korean counterpart, Kim Gun, and Japan's Takehiro Funakoshi for a trilateral meeting on Friday in Seoul, where the three nuclear envoys will tackle a broad range of issues, including the North's recent intercontinental ballistic missile launches and the COVID-19 outbreak it's currently struggling with. That's according to the U.S. State Department, which also said Sung Kim plans to reiterate the United States' commitment to seeking dialogue with North Korea while working with the international community to address the regime's unlawful weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missile programs. A press release stated his visit underscores the importance of close collaboration with South Korea and Japan as they pursue the complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. Kim's trip comes a week after the United Nations Security Council failed to pass a resolution proposed by the U.S. and vetoed by China and Russia that sought to slap fresh sanctions on Pyongyang for its recent missile tests. North Korea has staged 17 provocations this year alone, the most recent show of force taking place last week, just hours after U.S. President Joe Biden left Asia. The North's military ambitions, Russia's aggressions in Ukraine, China's moves to expand its own nuclear arsenal, and the emergence of so-called threshold states like Iran have been described by the New York Times as the erosion of the old nuclear order from the Cold War, leading to what experts are saying is a fast-approaching second nuclear age. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Seoul's national security advisor spoke over the phone with China's chief diplomat on peninsula affairs. During the first such session between the two officials since the launch of the Yoon government, Kim Sung-han highlighted that Pyongyang's nuclear and missile programs harm regional stability and called for Beijing to step up efforts so the regime would refrain from further provocations and return to dialogue. Yang Jiechi reportedly promised China will carry out its role in seeking a diplomatic solution. On bilateral ties, they pledged to expand substantive cooperation and agreed to strengthen communication to narrow differences on certain issues. The OPEC and its oil-producing allies have agreed to increase output in the coming months by a larger-than-expected amount amid soaring global energy prices. OPEC Plus said Thursday that it will increase production by 648,000 barrels per day in both July and August. The group has been slowly returning to nearly 10 million barrels per day it agreed to pull from the market in April 2020. In more recent months, production rose between 400,000 and 432,000 barrels per day each month. The group will meet again in late June. U.S. Federal Reserve Vice Chair Lael Brainard says she doesn't see the central bank taking a break anytime soon from its cycle of rate hikes, hinting at raising the interest rate further moving forward. Speaking to CNBC on Thursday, Brainard said the most likely path will be that it will continue to raise interest rates until inflation is under control. She added that there's a lot of work to do until inflation is tamed at the 2% target. Her comments also come as a number of Fed officials hinted at 250 basis point increases over the summer before taking a step back in September.
It's time for On Point, where we speak to experts to delve deeper into some of the key issues in the spotlight right now. Last night, South Korea faced off against Brazil in a friendly ahead of the 2022 Qatar World Cup set for later this year, in which Brazil easily defeated Korea 5-1.
That's right. While a ton of attention was, of course, on the Brazilian national football team, which boasts some of the best players in the world, including Neymar, many also had their eyes on the EPL Golden Boot winner, Son Heung-min. Now, for a look at last night's match and the upcoming World Cup, we connect with Kim Tae-ryung, sportscaster and CEO of Fit Together. Good morning to you.
Hey, good morning.
So first and foremost, what's your take on South Korea's match against Brazil? I mean, we knew it was going to be pretty difficult against the world #1 ranked team, but I mean, it was a pretty big loss for South Korea.
Yeah, I guess one of the best team of the world. We had a very austere game as both teams were moving toward the World Cup. And the game was serious for the whole 90 minutes, like the 5-1 score chart shows. Yesterday's game will be an important lesson for Korea. Korea maintained their playing style and played bravely. However, Brazil showed a series of world-class performances.
And, well, despite the loss, many say that it's still the most talented national football team that South Korea has had in the run-up to a World Cup. But what are still some things that the team needs to work on?
Well, the biggest strength of the Korean national team is that the team has a clear playing model, which means that the team has clear team color. The national team aims to hold on the ball for a longer period than the opposition and try to display a proactive game management. There is a direct correlation between this and the time Paulo Bento has spent with the national team. Since August 2018, he has been the manager of the team, and for 4 years, he has had a very consistent plan. Indeed, there was some criticism toward his ways. Nonetheless, Bento's national team has shown very good performance during the final qualification for the World Cup. I also believe that this national team is very talented and is very well balanced, but we must remember that we are in a very, very tricky group. Moreover, like in some situations during yesterday's game, many people have doubts about Korean national team having a lot of possession and playing proactively in the World Cup level. That's why there is an emphasis on the needed for Plan B. I also agree to this idea to a certain extent, but this should not be influencing the Plan A we have prepared until now. Of course, this will not be easy, but it is also not impossible. The Brazilian national team we faced last night is a very, very special team. Teams like Uruguay, Ghana, and Portugal are strong teams, but if we are well prepared to face them, we'll be able to show good performance against these teams.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about possession, because I think the biggest difference we saw in last night's match is Brazil's passing as opposed to South Korea's passing, which I think needs certainly a lot of work there. But going into, I guess, Son Heung-min, right, the Golden Boot winner, what kind of role will Son Heung-min play for the Taeguk Warriors during the World Cup? I mean, he's sort of been less aggressive in the attack with the national team as opposed to when, he plays for Tottenham.
Yeah, he has been less aggressive on the offense with the national team as opposite to playing for Tottenham. The national team and Tottenham are two different teams. and Son has different roles in both teams. Apart from the technical aspect, with the Korean national team, Son must bear a bigger responsibility. It's very difficult to play both the role of a leader and the best player, ace player in a team. Not least, Son is trying his best in his position. Son can play everywhere in both wider areas and the central areas. The national team, he tends to have more tactical freedom. The freer Son plays, the more frequently he will be involved. On the other hand, this means that he will be further away from the opposition goal, which means it will be easier for the opposition to defend against. Also, Tottenham's attacking pattern and speed is more direct than those of Korean national teams. So these factors may be difficult for Son.
And how do you think teams like Portugal, Uruguay and Ghana are going to strategize against South Korea and Qatar, especially with Son Heung-min now garnering more attention from opposing teams?
Yeah, as we could see against Brazil, there are talented attacking units within the Korean national team who will be able to work with Son, both in possession and during the transitional phase. Korean attackers can show their abilities as they approach the opposition penalty area. Son can finish the play himself or can act as a decoy for his teammates. Oppositions will focus on marking Son, but Son is used to this and know very well how to play under those circumstances. The problem is moving towards the attacking areas, as we could see from the game against Brazil yesterday. When the opposition played intense high press, Korea had lots of problems. They must find a way to connect fast and accurate pass to attackers beyond the halfway line. Of course, it's not easy, but we have to try, and so we have time. So we have to do our best on this way.
Yeah, it is interesting that you're saying that the opposing teams are going to focus more on Son Heung-min, but at the same time, South Korea does have very good attackers in Hwang Hee-chan, for instance, or Hwang Hee-cho.
Exactly.
Speaking of which, other than Son Heung-min, I mean, who do you think will be also a difference maker on the national team, and also why?
Well, in case of defense, Kim Min-jae is the key, but if we look for the difference maker in attack, well, it must certainly be Lee Jae-sung. Lee Jae-sung is a very smart and diligent player. He allows his teammates to shine and eventually allows himself to shine as well. Off the pitch, he is a player who allows his teammates' abilities to be improved along with his ability. There are two players who must come back quickly because, as you know, yesterday both players was absent, so we really want to see them quickly in the next game.
Well, thank you very much for your insights this morning. We look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
And that wraps up the first half of New Day at Arirang.
That's right, but stick around. We have more coming your way in the second half, so we'll be back in just a moment.
We will share South Korea's experience in tackling COVID-19 and introduce a Korean new day. A Korean survivor of Japan's wartime sex slavery met with
extraordinary climate crisis and pledged to work with the EU to tackle the challenge.
The objective of its North Korea policy is
Protesters gathering across the country to peacefully demand an end to hate and violence.
Arirang, what matters?
넌 볼 수 없고 가질 수 없어 뚝뚝 힘을 쏟아내줘 뜨거운 자태 한번 비추지 않고 내게만 가치란 그녀는 유명한 서울의 별 다 어딨나 so good right now. Maybe I had a drink or two, but this somehow feels like it's forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Maybe this is forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Forever.
And welcome back to the second half of New Day at Arirang. Now, wildfire that broke out Tuesday in Miryang, Gyeongsangnam-do province continues to burn.
The blaze has so far engulfed over 740 hectares of land, equivalent to some 1,000 football fields. But progress is being made. As of 6:30 p.m. local time, firefighters extinguished 81% of the fire, a dramatic increase from around 40% on Thursday morning. No reports of casualties or property damage so far. Some residents have been staying in temporary shelters. Blackpink has called for collective action to combat climate change. As advocates of the UN's 26th Climate Change Conference, the K-pop group released a video message via its official YouTube channel. The girls described how climate change impacts daily lives and called for action to protect the planet. The video was filmed at the British Embassy in Seoul last Thursday when the group attended an event to celebrate the Queen's birthday, the Queen's second Platinum Jubilee. With COVID-19 numbers begin to dwindle and the weather warming up, music fans in South Korea are welcoming the return of live performances as the concert industry booms. Ishiu reports.
As the COVID-19 situation improves in South Korea, the domestic concert market is seeing a boom. According to the South Korean ticketing platform Interpark, ticket sales for concerts in the second quarter of 2022 increased 324% compared to the same period last year. Moreover, the number of live concerts in the second quarter has also increased from last year's 246 to 412 this year, an increase of 67.5%. The fact that sales increased by a whopping 324% and the number of concerts rose by a smaller percentage shows just how beneficial the easing of COVID-19 restrictions in South Korea has been for the industry. Previous restrictions meant rules on spacing between members of the audience and limits in the number of attendees had to be implemented. Meanwhile, the types of concerts being held in the second quarter vary greatly. They range from K-pop to trot performances. While the genres might differ and as the weather warms up, one thing that concert goers can all enjoy is watching their favorite musicians outdoors.
Music, sunlight, and a slight breeze in the air, outdoor concerts like this one have returned this season after years on hiatus.
As was the case before the pandemic, people are gathering to enjoy performances with family and friends. At a recent outdoor concert, some music fans shared their excitement over attending a concert after years of not being able to.
It's my first time in 3 years coming to a festival and the first since the pandemic, so it feels refreshing and nice to be able to enjoy music in a different way.
I've been wanting to come to a concert for a long time. I really wanted to come to a concert like this now that the COVID-19 situation has gotten better and there are more concerts. I'm glad that we can enjoy them more freely now.
According to industry officials, they expect the good times to continue.
Many artists are preparing for concerts to be held in the second half of the year, so we expect the market to continue to boom. Last year, the concert industry recovered by a mere 25.9% compared to before the pandemic, but we forecast that this year it will return nearer to the pre-pandemic level.
이시후 아리랑 뉴스.
With distancing measures lifted here in South Korea, more and more people have also been returning to cinemas. Now, these establishments are expecting to return to profit for the first time since the pandemic began in 2020. Kim Bo-kyung helps us look beyond the numbers.
The queues to get popcorn and soda don't appear to be getting any shorter.
Movie theaters are one of the types of businesses that have really struggled due to the pandemic. A little over a month has passed since the social distancing rules were lifted, and this theater is once again busy with movie lovers who have come to see a film on the big screen.
According to some industry sources, more than 14.22 million people have visited movie theaters nationwide as of May 30th, which is almost 5 times more than the previous month.
With the social distancing measures lifted, and since we can watch movies while eating popcorn or other snacks, my friends and I came to see a movie after school.
Since we can go around freely now the measures have been lifted, I thought of watching a movie as I wasn't able to during the pandemic, so I came with my friends.
Since the start of the pandemic in February 2020, the industry has been operating at a loss. But with the soaring number of movie lovers now returning to theaters, there is an expected return to profit.
Usually, when we have 10 million visitors per month come to theatres, we say the industry has made a surplus. This May, for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been 14 million, so we are expecting to see a profit for this month.
The insider adds that if the movie is good enough, reaching 10 million viewers is definitely possible. Compared to the past, when even films that were considered worthy of attracting that many viewers could only get around a third of that. What's encouraging is that 2 movies in particular, both sequels, The Roundup and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, have been able to attract even more viewers than their previous editions had attracted before the pandemic. There's also the highly anticipated releases of 2 Cannes Film Festival Award winners, Broker starring Song Kang-ho, as well as Decision to Leave by director Park Chan-wook. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
It's now time for Global Insights, where we speak to experts from around the world on issues making headlines. More than 550 cases of monkeypox disease have been confirmed in 30 countries outside of the West and Central African nations where it is endemic, according to the World Health Organization. While experts say that the disease isn't as contagious as COVID-19, infecting less than 1 person upon exposure, the cases seem to have come out of nowhere, spiking in a few parts of the world. It hasn't yet made its way into South Korean borders, but with international travel set to pick up as countries loosen COVID-19 prevention measures, authorities here are still keeping a close eye on the trajectory of transmissions. We discussed today what we know about the outbreak so far and what the response should be. For this, we have joining us today Dr. Bharat Pankania, Senior Clinical Lecturer at the University of Exeter Medical School, and Dr. Kim Seung-taek, Virologist of Zoonotic Virus Lab at the Institute Pasteur Korea. A very warm welcome to you both. And Dr. Pankania, thank you so much for joining us at very early hours in the UK. We really appreciate it. And well, first off, there seem to be 2 major strains of monkeypox, the West African variety and the Central African variety. So could you tell us about their characteristics and, of course, which one is more dangerous?
So they're both part of the pox family of viruses. The only difference is that the Central African clade, in other words, the version that originates from Central Africa, appears to cause more severe disease and more fatalities compared to the West African variety, clade we call it, which is also disease-causing and also harmful, but less so than the Central African version.
And Dr. Kim, well, we don't have the virus here in South Korea yet, but what kind of patterns or trends have you noticed in the monkeypox spike in the UK, US and Europe?
Well, first of all, I have to say this is not the first outbreak outside of the Africa, but this spreading of this monkeypox is quite unusual. I mean, compared to the some past experience. And then secondly, just many confirmed cases are actually just being found among the men who have sex with men. And then, but this does not necessarily mean that this virus is transmitted by sexually. And then, but I think most experts agree that still just the virus is transmitted by very close contact. And then thirdly, the viral sequences that are actually just being sequences right now from the some outbreaks in the outside of Africa, and all the sequences are very similar, which actually suggests that maybe this outbreak actually just came from the one single infection source.
And well, Dr. Pankanya, you said that the monkeypox outbreak shouldn't escalate into a pandemic like we saw with COVID-19. And the World Health Organization, its officials seem to now be echoing this remark that you made. But still, what kind of caution should we still be taking, and what kind of prevention measures do you think need to be prepared by health officials?
So there is a lot that we still need to learn about monkeypox. And whilst I am confident that it was not a new pandemic, we need to be aware, we need to be doing our surveillance, we need to do our contact tracing and management of both cases and contacts of the case. So let's start from the beginning first, which is, whilst this is not going to become a new pandemic, something new has happened. So there was an animal reservoir for this virus, and maybe now we have a new animal reservoir as yet unknown for this virus, and that has transmitted from the animal place to humans, and then from humans to humans. So it is both a zoonotic and a human-to-human communicable infection. What we need to do is manage it and control it. This is similar to smallpox, not a severe disease causing, and we also have effective vaccines, and we also have pretty good antivirals. So what should we do? One, don't get infected. Number two, we need to look harder and deeper as to what could be a new animal reservoir for this virus. With every case, we identify their contacts. Remove the contact from circulation for 21 days, maybe also give them a vaccination to prevent the illness, and manage it by identifying the case, identifying the contacts, and managing both of them. And finally, don't mess around with the wild animals from where we keep on getting these new infections.
And Dr. Kim, well, South Korea's health authorities, they've placed monkeypox in the second level of contagious diseases under the country's system. So what does this really mean, and what are the chances of monkeypox infiltrating the country?
Well, first of all, the some second level of just a contagious disease in Korea actually just include the some COVID-19, and then measles, and then tuberculosis, and then hepatitis A, things like that. So what that means is actually that we actually have to report the actually confirmed cases, and also isolate the some confirmed the patient within 24 hours of just confirming that this monkeypox. So this is kind of what we have to do in terms of public health measures. And then in terms of chances of monkeypox just infiltrating the country, well, we are in some global, the period. By just using any air travel, any just infectious disease can be actually just travel just within the 24 hours since the onset of any infection in any part of the world.
And Dr. Kim, another question for you. If there is a monkeypox outbreak here in South Korea, then how rapidly do you think it would spread? And are hospitals well equipped to respond?
Well, first of all, this monkeypox is it's not like the SARS-CoV-2, and the SARS-CoV-2 is generally transmitted by the airborne transmission or just droplet transmission. But this actually monkeypox actually requires some close contact, so transmission potential is quite low compared to the SARS-CoV-2. In other words, I mean, and also the sort of just the basic reproduction number, our lot is just less than 1. So I think in terms of just our capacity to deal with the monkeypox in Korea, is that first of all, I have to say the Korean government, the KDCA, has the capacity to diagnose this monkeypox. And according to some press release from the company, that the Korean, also one of just some private Korean company also developed the diagnosis system for this monkeypox.
And Dr. Benkanya, well, it's the monkeypox is supposed to be an endemic in some African countries, and well, does that mean that monkeypox will fade away or die out eventually? And really, how should we reduce transmissions, particularly at this time where many countries are enjoying summer festivities, holding all sorts of concerts outdoors and festivals?
So as we have an animal reservoir for this virus, it is very, very difficult to eliminate it from planet Earth, because how do you do it? You could immunize the world's population, but there is still an animal reservoir. So the thing to do is to stop it going from one animal reservoir as we don't know which one it is, most probably rats or similar, to another animal reservoir, which we still don't know, and keep it contained in the animal kingdom. Then the second line comes in, which is, are we going to get more of this? Well, if we don't get infected, then there is no virus and we can continue with our lives as normal. So what we do need to do is have that awareness, looking out for it, monitoring it, removing people from circulation, and immunizing people. I'm afraid we cannot eliminate it, but what we can do is subdue it, control it, and keep it under control like we have done for the last 40, 50 years.
And Dr. Kim, well, once you do get monkeypox, though, how does a person recover from it? What kind of medical attention should they seek?
Well, as of now, the monkeypox is sort of just endemic, especially some West Africa, and those countries and those areas. Most of the measures that being taken right now is mostly just a supportive care, and not using any just specific antivirals. But I think there are some things that we can use in terms of just preventing, also some treating the monkeypox. And then for in terms of the antivirals, now the Cidofovir and then Cidofovir, this is kind of just the antiviral that were actually used for cytomegalovirus infection. And then another drug is tecovirimat, and then this is also just one of the drugs that we can actually try. And then lastly, some vaccinia, just immunoglobulin. And then these three are actually just sort of just suggested just the treatment options by the CDC and others. And that there are, because the monkeypox is not really just common, especially in the Western countries, and that there are not many actually just the cases. I mean, in terms of so there are some actually limited information on the some clinical efficacy of those just antiviral options. But these are supposed to be just to work against this monkeypox. And in terms of just the vaccine, in Korea, according to the KDCA, we have I think just plenty of just the vaccine doses. And then since this monkeypox, we are actually considering the vaccination. Considering vaccination, not for the whole just the Korean population, but we are actually concerned about some sort of just a ring vaccination, which is actually focusing on the high risk groups. So then and considering the some number of just the population in Korea, we have actually just more than 30 million doses available right now. This is about just this is also actually developed as a smallpox vaccination, but this smallpox vaccine just should work against the monkeypox as well.
And Dr. Benkanya, with COVID, we had a lot of concerns about long COVID and the prolonged symptoms that stay with you long after the virus long after you seem to have recovered. And well, are there such long-term side effects or conditions that result from having monkeypox?
No, we are not aware of this. However, unfortunately, some people can have scarring where they have those macule, papule, pustules, those little boils that develop on the periphery, which is face and arms. So if they get secondarily infected, you can be left with scarring. So as far as we know, we're not aware of what we would call long-term COVID-like symptoms. In other words, generally left unwell after the infection. But there is, unfortunately, can be, in some people, scarring after that infection.
And Dr. Pankania, while public health advisors like yourself are reassuring people that monkeypox won't be the new COVID-19, there still seems to be a very heightened sense of fear, not helped by some media sensationalism. And well, what then should be the public messaging on monkeypox at this point?
Well, it is always good to inform, educate and advise the public. An educated public is a better able public to deal with the news and what they need to do. And then politically, what we do need is this action to control it, especially from the animal interface to the human interface. What is going on? Have we got a new animal reservoir? Is this new animal reservoir then infecting humans? And we should, of course, ramp up the manufacture of the vaccines in case it is needed in several places for several interest groups like our colleague has just mentioned. So at the moment, we keep calm, but we need to be watchful. We need to find out what this animal reservoir is and then do something about it. In the meantime, also cooperate. No infection stays in one country, so we need to cooperate globally to control something that can become a global issue.
My last question to you, Dr. Kim, what kind of global coordination or cooperation do you hope to see in terms of keeping these diseases contained? That's to you, Dr. Kim.
Oh, yeah. Basically, I think in terms of this kind of some global just outbreak, we need some coordination. Especially we need to just identify or the source, the origin of these monkeypox just outbreak, and also we need to share the sequence information. And then so one of the actually just concerns among the scientists is that there are still just things that are not unknown at this moment, and then although the chances are pretty small, but then we are also concerned about whether there is any kind of just a mutation just occurring this monkeypox just about the viruses. So that in that kind of the question, we need some coordination among the the scientists along the entire globe. Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid we'll have to leave the discussion here for today, but that was Dr. Barak Paminkanya, Senior Clinical Lecturer at the University of Exeter Medical School. Thank you again so much for joining us at such inconvenient hours in England. And Dr. Kim Seung-taek, Virologist of the Zoonotic Virus Lab at the Institute Pasteur Korea. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. A group of demonstrators led by children marched across the Brooklyn Bridge in New York on Thursday to protest against gun violence. The group wore orange anti-gun violence t-shirts and chanted, "Don't shoot, we want to grow up." New York City has seen a rise in shooting incidents recently, including 2 attacks on subway passengers on April 12th and May 22nd. Speaking later on Thursday, the city's mayor, Eric Adams, announced that he is forming a task force to tackle gun violence. The rally comes a day after a gunman killed 2 doctors and 2 others at an Oklahoma medical building, and 10 days after another shooting at an elementary school in Texas, where 19 children and 2 adults were killed. Thousands marched through the streets of Jerusalem on Thursday for the annual Gay Pride Parade. Those attending the event were surrounded by heavy police protection, with 2,400 officers deployed. The parade has long been a point of tension between secular Israelis and the more conservative ultra-Orthodox Jewish community. Previous events saw religious radicals attack participants, with Pride Parade organizers this year receiving death threats ahead of the march. Authorities say 3 people suspected of threatening the event have been arrested. Meanwhile, in Tunisia, President Kais Saied dismissed 57 judges from the country's Supreme Judicial Council on Wednesday, accusing them of corruption and protecting terrorists. The purge comes as he looks to restructure the country's political system following his one-man rule consolidation, but has been met with rejection by nearly all of Tunisia's political parties. The council had served as the main guarantor of judicial independence since the introduction of democracy in 2011. Saied had already dismissed the country's government last July when he seized executive power. He has also replaced the Independent Electoral Commission and announced a new constitution this month that will be put to a referendum in July. In Commonwealth countries across the world, beacons are currently being lit to commemorate Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee. The Queen herself set the chain of events in motion by lighting the principal beacon at Windsor Castle. Symbolizing unity and an ancient form of communication, beacons will be set alight in countries including Australia, Zambia, South Africa and India, with the total number coming to at least 3,300 worldwide. The Queen is the first British monarch to celebrate a Platinum Jubilee and becomes the 3rd longest reigning monarch in the world, as she has been on the throne for 70 years. Meanwhile, the Royal Air Force staged a fly-past and painted the skies over Buckingham Palace in red, white and blue on Thursday. This comes as Britain itself began 4 days of Jubilee celebrations spanning June 2nd to June 6th. The event saw some disruptions as authorities reportedly arrested at least 12 climate activists for causing a disturbance at a military parade in London on Thursday. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good morning. Today is Tano, a traditional holiday when our ancestors held ceremonies to wish for a good harvest. And depending where you are traveling from, you're going to need to dress accordingly. Brace for midsummer heat for the western regions. But those in the east coast, including Guam, will notice big drop in ratings, hovering low 20s due to cold easterly winds. Some clouds to start the day in the capital regions, but will eventually give way to plenty of sunshine. Very high UV rays will beam down nationwide again, while dry weather advisory remains in place across southeast regions, that's including Busan and Daegu. Morning temperatures are 2 to 4 degrees higher than the same time yesterday this morning. And the highs will go up 1 to 3 degrees higher in the west, so Gwangju will be going up to 33 degrees, but Daegu just slightly lower at 31 degrees this afternoon. Now, 3-day weekend starts tomorrow, Monday marking Memorial Day in Korea, with rain in the forecast for east and south coast and Jeju Island on Sunday. With that, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
And that wraps up our newscast at this hour, but we'll be back next week for our Monday's edition of New Day at Arirang.
Thanks very much for tuning in, and do stick around for more updates throughout the day. Have a great day and weekend wherever you are. Goodbye.
Everyone knows I'm passionate. Know why? Look at how passionate Koreans are. And you know I'm fast. Don't blink. Koreans move fast too. I'm creative on the pitch. People say I'm smart. Just look how smart Korea is.